So you clicked on this video for one of three reasons. One being that you listen to Ethel Cain and want to understand the lore. The second being that you want a place to start getting into Ethel Cain, or the third being that you already know the Ethel Cain lore like the back of your hand and are watching videos like these for the sake of hearing it again and judging it like you're some kind of film critic, which I confess I do a lot. Like, when I'm bedazzling, I always do that. Anyways, you're in the right place. Quick disclaimer here, I tried my best to find all of the lore tidbits I can, but this is not perfect. And I will never claim that this is perfect. But I'm just an autistic girl, here to yap about her hyperfixation. And a quick warning, so that the masses don't hate me, the story gets dark, so if anything ever triggers you, I'd recommend, watching something else. I'm not giving specific triggers because we're this early into the video, and I don't want YouTube to, take this down, and this also has, everything. Now to the lore. The main character, from whose point of view the story is told, is Ethel Cain. And to preface this, I've had to explain it before to my friends, but this is a completely fictional story. Ethel Cain is a character, not a real person, so don't think that any of this is, actual true crime stuff. No. It's fictional. Anyways, back to the lore. Ethel Lenora Cain was born in 1970 to her parents Vera and Joseph Cain in the small town of Shady Grove, Alabama. Her father was a preacher in the town until he died when she was about 10. She was raised heavily Christian, and in her teenage years took over the services in the church. She was kind of a loner growing up, an outsider, and she always dreamed of escape. She met a boy through church when she was a kid, though, one who will have narrative significance a little later on. They kind of drifted apart for a bit. She also had one best friend, a girl named Janie. And this is where the story starts, with their prequel album, Willoughby Tucker, I'll Always Love You. The story starts when Ethel and the rest of the central cast were 16 years old. Before I dive into the album, there's this image that appears something like out of a yearbook, which would have been placed in this era. And I'll read it now. I'll move over so I can insert the image in editing. Wheels, Wheels, Wheels by Sabrina Maxwell. Everyone had a different way of getting to and from school. The variety ranged from bikes to scooters and buses to cars. The most popular form of transportation was cars. When looking at the school parking lot, a big variety of trucks and cars were seen. Many students owned four-wheel drives and lowriders. Richard Hudson, a junior, owner of a black lowrider, stated, "The ladies love it. Some students enjoyed simple cars, and some chose to style in their sports cars. Michael Musgrove, a senior, owner of a 1990 Integra, said his car got him where he was going in style. Those students didn't own a car, a scooter, or a bike were transported to school by bus. Tanya Jackson, a senior, stated that riding the bus was all right by her. Overall, the entire student body was involved in some form of transportation, whether it be riding their own car or riding the bus. All in all, transportation was one big wheel." And it's captioned, "Senior Ethel Cain gets ready to leave for work in the parking lot after school." Now, to the album, Willoughby Tucker, I'll Always Love You. I am flexing that I have the final, even though it's not rare. I really do not care. The opening track is Janie, named after Ethel's best friend. It details Janie getting a boyfriend and Ethel fearing, yet also seeing her drift apart from her in favor of being with her boyfriend. This is actually one of the few songs that have made me cry before. The others are Never Grow Up and Ronan by Taylor Swift, and then Holidays by Conan Gray, but that's all the songs that have ever made me cry, so this is an exclusive list. This also really shows Ethel's attachment to other people and how strong it can be, especially with her fear of losing them. She's very anxious about losing the people that she loves and is attached to. The second track, Willoughby's Theme, is an instrumental that shows how Ethel's romance with Willoughby, her one true love in life, and then her boyfriend in the album, he's the boy that she met in church and then drifted apart from, and then they reconnected in high school. And then the love is something that will leave her, and probably him too, fundamentally changed no matter what the outcome is. Fuck Me Eyes, track 3, my favorite song, is an introduction to a new character, Holly. She's the sex icon of this small town, despite only being a teen, which raises a whole bunch of issues that I'm not really going to be going into right now. Her character is misconstrued to paint her in a more black and white manner, and people spread rumors about her that Ethel perpetuates in this song. Holly is also implied to have a difficult home life, which is something she takes in stride. She doesn't really let it bring her down. Ethel is jealous of her and is afraid that Willoughby will pay more attention to Holly and get with Holly instead of with her. But Ethel can also see the motives behind Holly and why she is the way that she is. And the sadness that she has that just nobody notices, and her trying to get somewhere in life. That obviously being a very difficult thing to do in such a small town. The next song, Nettles, is the only song that illustrates Ethel and Willoughby in love, like when they're happily in love. It starts out with Ethel worrying and dreaming about losing Willoughby in the hospital, fears that he tries to calm the chorus. The song is about being so in love when you still hate yourself, and then that hinders the romance. Think vibes of The Cure by Olivia Rodrigo. It also shows Willoughby's likely abusive relationship with his father and his tendency to be pessimistic when faced with the real world. And then Ethel is the opposite. She's idealistic to a fault. And then she just romanticizes the worst of everything in her head. And then this song also has parts about gender roles and how women's issues are swept aside, and how Willoughby is the man of the relationship and he should fight off all his problems, and then Ethel's the woman and should hide from them or sink beneath them and let them consume her in a way. Willoughby's interlude is the next instrumental track and the 5th track of the album. It's sort of a bridge between its neighboring 2 lyrical tracks, Nettles and Dust Bowl. It takes place over the time in which Ethel's and Willoughby's relationship goes from being light and happy in Nettles to, where it's starting to fail and they're falling apart in Dust Bowl. Dust Bowl is the 6th track, as I've already said. It elaborates on that part and shows how and why they weren't working out anymore. Willoughby is being more distant, and then Ethel is reaching to try and get him back the way they were before, back in Nettles. They're having sex and doing drugs, all for Ethel to try and keep him. But she still carries the insecurities that she had earlier, but now they're taking more of an actual toll because you can see more confirmation of those insecurities. And in the song, we're also told that Willoughby's dad was a Vietnam vet, which sort of builds upon the earlier themes, which elaborates more on how and why his relationship with his dad would be abusive. Knock at the Door, the next song, builds upon that further, the themes of Willoughby's father. It shows that his father is imprisoned for something nondescript and that Willoughby is not afraid of death anymore. And then this is juxtaposed with Ethel, who is afraid of death and losing what she loves. Radio Towers is another instrumental track, the last instrumental track of the album, which has a constant through the whole way, one thing that's constant throughout the whole song. And it is that there's a hospital monitor, beeping. And then this, kind of reminds me of the beginning of Nettles, where Ethel was fantasizing about her fears of losing Willoughby. Considering the next song, the fact it's a clean transition into it, the detail can be seen as foreshadowing. Tempest, the penultimate song, is a glimpse in the story, being the only song. It's unique in the story, being the only song not written from Ethel's point of view. This is a glimpse into Willoughby's mind during the tornado of Shady Grove in 1990, likely having a fight with Ethel before going out in the storm, facing his fear. Whether he faced the fear in desperation or to prove something or whatever else, he put himself in harm's way in his worst fear, because he has a phobia of storms. In the song, it's clear that he wants death at this point, and he hates himself. And then him not ever being found after the events of Tempest leads to a lot of theories. None of them are confirmed or denied, so you really can just believe whatever you want about his fate. The main theories I hear is that he died in the tornado, that he took his life somewhere else after escaping, or that he just ran away. The last two can kind of go together-ish. But I personally like to believe the first one, but again, none are confirmed or denied. You can believe whatever you want. I think the second one has the least validity, but again, It's really up to you. I can't tell you what to or to not believe because it's ambiguous. The final song on the album is Waco, Texas. This song is Ethel's grief after losing Willoughby, and in its 15 minutes, it really like puts you through every stage of grief. Like listening to this makes me miss Willoughby, even though he's a fictional character made up for songs. Ethel's idealism here again is contrasted with Willoughby's pessimism for the last time, because this doesn't really carry into our next album. And she won't give up on the hopes they had for their future, which is that carries into the next album. And right here, timeline-wise, would be the excerpt of the upcoming book that is Ethel's diary. I will insert the image. And I'm going to read you the excerpt. The tornado that swept through Shady Grove, Alabama on the evening of April 21st, 1990 would be immortalized in the town's history alongside the 3 bodies it left in its wake. Millicent Dredger, mother of 3 and grandmother of 16, was found in the wall between her living room and guest room impaled by a maple limb. When first responders entered the house the next morning, a tuft of foliage crowning the roof like a garnish, they were comforted by the sound of a male voice as they crept in through the side door. Upon discovering Billy Graham's effigy on the television as they rounded the corner into the living room, preaching to no one but Mrs. Dredger's skewer body opposite him, that comfort quickly waned. The second body discovered belonged to that of Mr. Arnold Layton, inside the feed store he owned on the east side of town. The building was old, a little too old, and the ceiling had caved in at the wind's slightest provocation, crushing him instantly. His dog survived somehow, though. He stuck around to let the person he saw know what had happened through a frenzied series of yaps and howls. The paper made a big deal about the heroic mutt, but less so about its trip to the pound in the following weeks when there was no one to claim him. Mr. Layton lived alone, like he liked it, and he died just the same, which he would tell anyone who asked. That's how he wanted to go. The third body was a John Doe, found flung out into a field somewhere in the Springs with his face smashed in. He was a drifter, most likely, or at least that's what everyone prayed for at night as they bit their lips and knelt before the foot of their beds. It's just easier to lose a stranger. As for me personally, I lost Willoughby that night. The only thing I ever truly loved in this wretched life, and I left him curled between the couch and the coffee table when it all got too loud. Be mean is what he'd tell me every time I'd start my shaking. What he didn't tell me is that you can be mean and still be a coward. Some things you have to learn on your own. The next part of the story is told through the album, Preacher's Daughter. This album feels really cinematic in the way that it tells a story. I always see it as a movie in my head, which I would absolutely kill for like a horror movie telling the story of Ethel, but that's... The first song is more like a prologue, setting the tone for the story. Family Tree intro shows the themes of generational trauma and not being able to escape cycles, along with religious themes, which I believe ties into the story of Cain from the Bible with her surname. In the simplest terms, Cain betrayed his brother Abel, which led to Cain's entire lineage being cursed. That's like a really clear metaphor for the generational trauma faced by Ethel, so it's safe to say that the surname isn't a coincidence. The next song, American Teenager, is like a pop anthem that sounds really similar to State of Grace by Taylor Swift, which is one of my favorite songs off Red. It's about everything the average teenager in America should be and how it's unachievable, talking about like the military and high school sports. It also goes into how Ethel started to use alcohol to cope and how she would help out in church while also having doubts about the American dream and her religion. A House in Nebraska, the third track, is spiritually just another part of Waco, Texas. I have some gripes with this song because I'm from Nebraska and I hate it here, but that's besides the point. This song is still Ethel deep in her grief after losing Willoughby and how she would abuse alcohol. The title comes from the dreams Ethel and Willoughby had of running away together to a house in Nebraska, which obviously that never happened, but entirely through the story, Ethel never truly, completely lets go of those dreams. The fourth track, Western Nights, is about her relationship with a criminal bad boy of the town, Logan Phelps. He robs banks and is violent towards Ethel, but the way she describes the sex they have doesn't sound the most consensual, but nothing is like explicitly wrong in that situation. I just think it's kind of messed up, but I don't know. She tries to romanticize the situation and him, and willingly accepts whatever comes for the escape, because remember, she dreams of escape. And she like completely achieved her I Want, because if you really think about it, American Teenager is a Disney Princess I Want song about how she wants to escape her small town. But she achieves that I Want. And Between this song and the next, Logan is caught and shot dead by the police in a bank robbery gone wrong. Ethel is the accomplice, seen on his motorbike, so she has to go on the run from the cops, which takes place in the fifth song, Family Tree. This song is about the feeling of escape Ethel gets while being on the run. She's in Texas at this point, far away from her hometown. It also hints at her finding a family secret that's left ambiguous for now. This song, in a way, marks the death of the old Ethel from Shady Grove, this being the new Ethel who got that taste of freedom. Hard Times is the next song, about Ethel thinking back to the sexual abuse she suffered through the hands of her father in childhood. She sees it in a complicated way in hindsight, knowing it was wrong, but she still misses her father because he is deceased. And her accepting the past is really the last thing and moving on from her old self. The whole 3-song arc here being her leaving the person she used to be. The next song, Thoroughfare, starts Act 2 of the album. In it, she meets this man, Isaiah, who's traveling west in the pursuit of love, inviting Ethel to come with him. The West, especially California, which is the destination they go to in the song, is seen as basically an America within America, where you go to find new freedom. Over the course of the road trip, Ethel falls for him hard. By the end of the song, you wouldn't expect anything to be wrong, but, this is the most lighthearted point in the story thus far, but the mood is quickly brought down by the next track, Gibson Girl. This title comes from the women drawn by Charles Dana Gibson, which were the ideal women of the 1910s. In this song, Isaiah begins to sex traffic Ethel, drugging her as well. In this, Ethel reaches to try and be the one with agency in the situation, even though she's being taken advantage of, this is another example of her being an unreliable narrator. The newspaper clipping, I'm going to move over so I can put the image. The newspaper clipping explains the plot of this song pretty well. And now I will read it to you. Preacher's Daughter Gone Wild, so-called Gibson girl wanted in connection to the local prostitution ring by Kelsey Gibson. Aldine, probably butchered that, Texas. Following a raid at the Red Velvet Swing, a local gentleman's club, multiple persons are being questioned by police in regards to a secret prostitution ring that operated out of the business's back rooms. Amongst the women reported to be involved is Ethel Cain, age 20, from Shady Grove, Alabama. Cain is currently wanted by the police for her suspected connection to the robbery of First National Bank in Montgomery, Alabama. Cain was reported to have been in a relationship with a man involved at the robbery, Logan Harvey Phelps, age 23. Phelps was pronounced dead at the scene after an altercation involving an officer. Phelps shot the officer in the shoulder with a 9mm handgun as he made his exit from the bank following the robbery, toting a duffel bag containing over $50,000 in cash. The officer then chased Phelps down the sidewalk and into an alleyway where Phelps' vehicle was located. The officer shot Phelps twice in the back as he attempted to enter the driver's side door. It was unclear to the officer whether Cain or someone else was driving the vehicle. The car was found abandoned on the southbound side of Route 87, less than 10 miles from Cain's residence. The duffel bag was recovered from the floorboard. All $50,000 were accounted for. Cain's mother reported her missing the prior evening. She has not released a statement. According to a local witness who wishes to remain anonymous, Cain was lodging at a local hostel with an unidentified man. The two were seen regularly coming and going at late hours. Cain appeared to be under the influence of an unknown substance, slurring her words and stumbling when she walked. Multiple residents of the hostel reported seeing them to engage in illicit behavior involving illegal substances. On the evening of March 15th, the pair were reported to have been engaged in a domestic dispute. Cain, allegedly acting on the influence of psychedelics, assaulted her partner, after which he knocked her unconscious and dragged her into his vehicle. The two were last seen in the old Winn-Dixie parking lot in Arlington, Texas, following a tip from an anonymous resident of the hostel. The police were led to a now closed gentleman's club on the south side of the city. Located in the back rooms of the establishment were various photos of Cain in compromising positions on the wall, posted on the walls, allegedly used by her partner to advertise her for sexual services. After being questioned by police, multiple patrons of the club reported seeing Cain stumbling around with various other men, presumably all who had paid to engage in intercourse with her, amongst other things. Allegedly, Cain was a disgusting, filthy slut. Well known in her hometown as the daughter of the beloved pastor, Cain would do just about anything on her knees. Allegedly an avid user of heroin and other various opioids, as well as a bottle of vodka, Cain spent long hours on her back in that dimly lit, damp recesses of the disgusting cesspool of human depravity that, in all honesty, should have been closed shortly after opening. Without her father there to guide her, it's obvious how eager she was to fall off the wagon and into a black hole of putrid fornication with anyone who would show her a scrap of attention. Apparently, it's easier than one would think to give into total despair when you supposedly have it all figured out. You're a prominent member of the community. They all look up to you, consider you a role model, and this is how you repay them? This is what they get for all that kindness and support they extended you after dear old dad burned to a crisp in that fire? Poor little preacher's daughter, what a mess you've made of yourself. Police have put out a statewide notice to be on the lookout for these two individuals. Upon her last appearance, Cain has long brown hair and green eyes. She's approximately 5'8" and may act irrationally. Her partner is blonde with blue eyes and is approximately 6'2". They were last seen traveling in a black Chevrolet pickup truck with a dent on the rear passenger bumper. It's unknown at this time whether they are armed, but police advise the assumption that they may be dangerous. And I noticed that this took place in Texas, which is something I hadn't realized earlier. I also noticed that the bank robbery gone wrong took place still in Alabama. That might be an inconsistency with the story, but surely you can piece it together yourself. This also makes me wonder when the events of Gibson Girl began and how long they were in California, but these questions will probably be cleared up when the book is released. This is also the point in time I replaced a missing poster as her last time being seen, both as written on the poster and in the newspaper clipping, is in that Winn-Dixie parking lot. The missing person poster and kidnapping all leads up to the 9th track, Ptolemaea. Named after the 9th circle of hell for those who betray their guests, Ptolemaea is set just after Isaiah kidnaps Ethel and takes her to a shack somewhere in Northern California. Ethel is hallucinating from the drugs Isaiah would give her while he's violent, and he does murder her, or at least inflicts enough damage for it to be fatal eventually. The closing monologue of the song after the infamous scream is death itself talking to Ethel. And if you listen close enough at the very end, there's a death rattle, which if you don't know what that is, it's a shaky breath. When your neck is like pushed in, it comes right before you die. The next two songs I'm going to combine and speak of at the same time because they're both about Ethel's death. There's August Underground and Televangelism. August Underground is about her slow and painful physical death and then being taken down to the freezer in the basement of that shack. She was killed in the attic. And then Televangalism is more about like her soul's death and then going to heaven after she's completely dead. The next two songs, Sun-Bleached Flies and Strangers, take place from Beyond the Grave. She's kind of speaking as a ghost, basically? I don't know. It's from Beyond the Grave. Sun-Bleached Flies is Ethel looking back upon her life with acceptance and forgiveness so she can finally rest fully in peace. And she also brings up Willoughby again in this song. She brings up the house in Nebraska, and then she also, there's a part where it's, oh, it will be, but it sounds like, oh, Willoughby, and that's just like, that's heartbreaking. No, I'm not. The final song is Strangers, which is the epilogue track about both Ethel saying her final goodbyes to her mother and also addressing Isaiah as he cannibalizes her. There's also the final extra document, which is Isaiah's letter to his mother after the events of Strangers. It says, "Dear Mama, I'm sorry for what I did to her, but I did it for you. I love you, Mama. Your son, Isaiah." Which, the way it's phrased, makes me wonder if what he did had some culty motivations, not the trafficking part, but like the killing and the cannibalism. I feel like that has culty motivations, but I don't know for sure. It sounds like an option, because I don't think anyone's mother would be overjoyed with them murdering it and eating someone, but maybe I'm just speaking for myself here. Anyways, that was all of the lore of Ethel Cain we have at the minute. I'm sure more is going to be clarified when the book comes out, who knows when, but this is what I could decipher from the very little there actually is to work with. If you want me to do something breaking down the book when it does come out, I can. I love analyzing stuff, even though my analyses are not always correct. But for now, goodbye very little, everyone. Nor signing off.